world, welcome to the Women of BSV. We are delighted to have a conversation today with Siosi Samuels. He is the managing director of Faia, as well as the founder of Hona app. He is a leader in the world, instigating Tuvalu and their digital ledger. So, welcome to the show, George.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be surrounded by all of you.
You've literally, I think you're the first person to have a full house of us, actually. Yeah. Well, very nearly. Maybe River's not here, is she? But no, you're doing pretty well. We've all showed up for you, George.
Thanks for having me.
I was just like looking at your LinkedIn page and things and thinking, so if you're in Mexico at the minute, but you normally live in Singapore, I'm intrigued by your past history because I actually know nothing about the other side of the planet to speak of, if I'm honest.
Yep.
So I'd be really delighted to hear about your upbringing and where you were born and grew up, and a bit about your background.
Sure.
Is that right?
So I was born in Fiji. My dad is Fijian Indian. My mother is Tuvalu and Samoan, so South Pacific. Migrated to Australia when I was about 2 years old. Then moved to Bangladesh when I was 8. So I lived in Bangladesh for about 10 years. I went to an American international school there. That's where I kind of adopted more of the American accent, although I like to call it neutral, because depending on who I'm talking to, I can kind of easily go into different accents. And that probably shaped my worldview. Going to an international school, constantly moving around a lot, and eventually meeting someone like Craig, right, where it was that sort of just international mindset and view, and wishing that everybody just got along, but knowing that that's not always the reality. And so after Bangladesh, moved back to Australia, went to university there, stayed there for another 10 years, and then moved to Singapore. So from Singapore, that's where I set up the two companies, Faia and Hona, because I really saw that the tech, there was going to be sort of people and culture stuff coming out of it that needed to be really grounded in that area. And I made my way to Mexico. Well, that was more for love. So during the pandemic, I took a gamble. I actually met my now partner, at CoinGeek London. She wasn't there for CoinGeek, but I invited her to one of the pre-party events at was it the Four Seasons, I think, in London?
Yes, I remember that.
Yep. And so she was there, and that was our first meeting. And she was just like, "What the hell is all this?" Like,
I bet. It's a hell of a thing to drop into. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's so lovely.
Yeah. So after that, we were. She had a similar background to me in terms of growing up all over the place, and we just hit it off. We kept communicating, and it was about October of last year. I was in Singapore, lockdown and everything. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to fly all the way over to Mexico and see how this goes, right? I had a 50-50 chance it was going to go great or not. And story of my life, taking such chances. And luckily, it has turned out beautifully. I'm here. I'll probably be spending some more time here because I'm falling in love with, Latin America. And I'm very close to the US now, which is even better because I actually haven't spent too much time in the Americas. I've been more Asia Pacific, right, most of my life. And I just love learning about different cultures, how people do things differently. And just been really enjoying my time.
And Mexico's a lovely place as well.
Oh my gosh, the history. We just got back from celebrating the Day of the Dead in Mexico City.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. They didn't have it last year, right? So they went crazy this year. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes. And George, in making big decisions like that, you can have confidence, even though it seems like a big risk. Is that because of being in tune with your intuition?
100%. So I was surrounded by women most of my life because I have two sisters, mom, aunties, grandma, very strong, feminine influence in my life. I guess being the only the stronger masculine energy in the family, my role was the balancer of all the female energies at home. And so I learned from my mom, to always trust in my intuition, my guts, my dreams, my visions. My family is very big on dreams. So for those who are that way inclined, even in the BSV space, we often have those conversations in private, right? And that's just what I grew up with. So a lot of my movements around the world were actually instigated from many of my dreams.
Wow.
So yes, so that's what tends to push me. Korppi, with the wolf stuff.
Yes,
like,
yes.
Mhm. Yep.
Oh well, we're all hyper intuitive here. God, like, there's barely any room for all the intuition going on in this group. I tell you, we're no, I'm making a joke, but nonetheless, though, I think as women, it's like inbuilt. Like, you can't deny your intuition. It's so strong. It's how I feel anyway.
No, I agree. And actually, the Pacific region, they're very much the feeling type. If you look at the culture for the South Pacific, it's all about family. It's all about the collective. It's all about taking care of one another. And as someone who's kind of been rooted in that culture, but growing up in the West, I've always played this sort of like balancing role, right? If there's too much masculine, then it's like, okay, how do you have more feminine come into play? If there's too much feminine, well, you also need to balance it out with the masculine, because there can be too much feminine too. Living in the household full of women, I'd experience that all the time. And, so it's that role. I think that's been my pattern growing up. I've always found myself in positions where I've had to play that sort of balancing role. And then Faia, the actual inspiration for the name, is essentially to bridge two divides, right? It's like a bridge to span two divides. So it's a Samoan word. And it's also used interchangeably to sort of bring the village together. So for Faia, what we're wanting to do is sort of, take all that masculine energy we definitely see in the blockchain tech space, and bring more of that, the grounding opposite, and to bring all of the people stuff, the collective stuff. So that's a lot of what we're working with.
That's very beautiful. It's pretty deep and important stuff you're talking about there, and doesn't get talked about nearly enough, I think.
No, but that's why I'm talking about it with you guys, because I know you'd get it. And that's the deeper reason as to why, I started Faia. But of course, I know how the world works. So what we put out is, tech this, tech that, practical business solutions. But we know what we're doing behind the scenes.
And there's got to be a reason for it, hasn't there? I mean, if you're making all these advances and doing all this work, you've got to have like a driving force, good reason to do it all.
Yes.
And it's always the people. It always comes back to the people, doesn't it?
Yep. 100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
So for the people that don't know, I know about the Hona app, but what is Faia? Will you explain a little bit about that company?
Yes. So if you go to faiacorp.com, so FAIACORP.com, actually, if you guys take a look, we just recently updated the website, and you might see what is showing now. So Mark Zuckerberg, right, has recently rebranded Facebook to Meta. Now, in many respects, this can be a bit of a cringe moment, but at the same time, they have the network size to be able to push a lot of what we all may have been doing in bits and pieces across the blockchain space. But now with that sort of added push, from a network that large. And so, Faia has been about bridging communities and technology. That's kind of been our anchor, right? And with the push now into the metaverse space, essentially what we're positioning ourselves as is experts in meta communities. So how to build communities in this emerging metaverse space, which includes blockchain. It's like the whole thing is about blockchain, right? And so, thank you. So
it's really pretty.
Oh, thanks. Yes, my other colleagues, they also were like, hey, we need to put some more of our, like, the feminine into what we do. We're all about balance, right? Like, we need to start doing that. So they had a hand in it. And so, it's about looking at, okay, in the metaverse space, how do communities actually engage with one another? Because if you can see, people are valuing their digital lives more than their physical, right? And so they're looking for a sense of community in something that's non-physical, and the communities are very sort of transient, right? Like, people just kind of like move in and out of different communities. And so although they might be a part of multiple, they're not necessarily connecting with everybody in that community. They're taking like a few of these people from each of the communities, and then kind of forming their own sense of community that way. And so as we're helping, even like the Tuvalu government, right? The Tuvalu, they've got the Pacific culture, right? And so as they're moving into this digital space, a lot of these things that we're talking about, we want to sort of just like handhold and guide them through, right? But also implementing, protocols, best practices about how to navigate that. So a lot of the things that we've just been doing over the last couple of years, the timing couldn't have been better. Facebook making their announcement, and we just put on an event this week with an introduction to the metaverse. Next week, we're doing an introduction to meta communities. And we're just doubling down on this area because it's kind of like what we've been building towards.
Explain that a bit more to us, George.
I can see the
meta.
pack.
Yes, the pack is there.
What are you doing? Are you explaining the concepts to people? Are you running workshops? Or what do you mean?
Yep. So we've got, if on the site, if you scroll up, yep, just right there.
Yeah.
Cool. So on the services side, we've got advisory, right? So obviously there are people who reach out just to ask for, okay, what is all this stuff? Can you explain it to us? Can you give a workshop to our organization or our team or community about this stuff? We're like, okay, we can do that. The other bit is the harmonizing culture and tech side. That's more specific with, like, say, the Tuvalu government. So there, what we actually have to do is essentially change management process, right? Take away the jargon. It's change management, cultural transformation with organizations, okay? And then on the activating the meta communities, that is essentially, sort of community design and community management, but within the metaverse space. So there are all these fancy jargon, right? But fundamentally underneath, those are like the basic sort of categories of services that we're providing. And the integration aspect of the technology, we have partners, right? We got Enchain, we've got Elas Digital, and we work with them. So they provide all the technology stuff, and we help contextualize it through the culture.
So does that mean that you're helping businesses find solutions to problems, via the blockchain technologies that are emerging?
Correct.
Right.
But using that community first and sort of culturally contextual approach. So we kind of start with that because most people go into, it's like, here's our product, here's our tech, but they don't contextualize it, right? For like maybe how that organization sees things through their culture. So we do things like, culture audits, community planning, and a lot of organizations now, because they're going remote, they're actually now using those terms of community. So they're not even referring to their organizations like, this is our employee community.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
The timing again is right. And this is what I saw, like, I guess back 2015, because I was dealing back then with the whole the gig economy, right? Like you had a lot of freelancers, starting to come out, corporates leaving the corporate world, starting their own businesses. So I saw the beginnings there, and then, the blockchain crypto stuff started coming out. I was like, okay, this is going to converge at some point.
And with so many people working at home as well, I mean, what does it mean to be a company anymore? It used to be like a group of people in a building, didn't it? But it's not anymore.
Not now. I mean, this is why I've been watching the developments in the DAO space, right? There's a lot of, at least on Twitter, right? And for those who have access to all of these tools, but in the DAO space, what they're trying to do is exactly this, in the sense of, okay, how do we create a sense of like working relationship or sense of community professionally, as we're now all having our virtual avatars, right? In the gaming sector, yes.
The DAO is the Decentralized Autonomous Organization.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct for those listening.
Oh, great.
So that is the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Faia, what we try to do a lot is compare like what's happening in this emerging space with older concepts. So DAOs are essentially cooperatives. So some of you might be aware of it, some of you might not be, but before we had the corporate hierarchical structure, right? And then there was sort of a movement of a business entity called, or business structure called a cooperative. And it literally was all about sort of, okay, how do we give power back to the people? How could the whole employee, base own more shares in the company? Now, cooperatives, if you look at their history, they didn't last very long because of people coordination and management issues. And the people in the DAO space are experiencing the same problems, but they think it's a new problem. So they're trying to create the tools to help with this people coordination. But from what I'm seeing, there are tools that already exist. It's just general basic project management tools, task management tools. Just use that, and it's the language of DAOs that just needs to be adjusted. But I think what is interesting now is that as we move into Web 3.0, so sorry for anyone who will be listening to this and with all the jargon, Web 3.0 is just the next phase where everything's all blockchain of the web. When people are participating in Web 3.0 using blockchain as the basic infrastructure, that means they're carrying their data with themselves, then it won't matter as much in terms of how do we coordinate shares and whatnot. Your participation could be the shares. I think that's what a lot of blockchain-based applications are trying to move towards. We're seeing this in the NFT space. It's like, okay, hey, I'm going to give you guys an NFT and it's going to give you lifetime membership or something. But the ideal is where you could go into an application, maybe even Hona, like that's what we're moving towards. And as you participate, you could own more of the company as well. So it'll be dynamically shifting.
Oh my God. That's quite a concept, isn't it?
Yep. And that's the true proof of work, right? Because you're proving with your data movement.
Wow.
Epitome of having skin.
Yes. Exactly.
No, I mean, that's really good. People talk about stakeholder economy, don't they? And I've always felt it's a bit disingenuous. It's a term that politicians use. But I mean, that would be true stakeholder.
That would be true.
Yeah.
And sorry, but when Facebook first came out, it was, my roommate in college said, oh yeah, there's this Facebook, and she sent me the invite. And then I moved to China, and then I met a lot of people from around the world, and I got them all to join Facebook because we were having adventures. We wanted to share pictures. And then it just continued to grow and grow and grow. And you get a lot more friends from high school, from the family involved. And in the end, you're the product and they're selling the data.
Correct.
But I think what you're talking about here in Web 3.0 is that the actual user of an application or of a website even could then have some incentive for interacting and using it and building the membership base. And this is, I know Casey's has an expertise with the referral systems. And how is this different from that? Is it captured through the time that you're using the app?
How is it different? I mean, that's a good analogy to use, right, with the referral system. But if you imagine in the future, right, everything is like all your data is essentially your own micropayments, right, through your wallet. So what you would see, like we already kind of see this, like glimpses of what will occur, like in Handcash, right? All these pews and all of these microtransactions that are constantly going. After a while, you can't keep up. But the interfaces for this are going to get better, right? And because it needs to provide more meaning, because you're not going to be tracking all those little microtransactions. But every single piece of data you will be able to see on your own wallet, right? And as a result of that, you share in the access with the company that you're, say, moving into a platform for. So as an example, imagine Facebook, right? Instead of them hosting all the data, all of it is actually you. And they're going to share in sort of like these micro smart contracts saying, hey, we want to see, like, we're asking your permission to see your data, and this is what you get in return. And then you say yes or no. And then in the back end, in your wallet, you'll see, okay, hey, Facebook accesses data. And then you can use that as proof in the long term, but at a very minuscule, like micro level. And, we're seeing with Craig Wright's court case right now, like that's the level of detail, because you can see that's how Craig thinks. And in the future, it's going to be possible, right, that you could go to that level of detail. But it's going to take, there's another sort of culture shift or paradigm shift that needs to take place, where people will even just operate online in that way. Like people right now cannot fathom microtransactions for everything that they do online, right? It's like
I'm hearing that a lot. Why would I pay for that? I'm like,
because they're still thinking in payments, right? This is the thing. Like the payments and the data is one. People think right now in the world, we think I pay for something, then I get something, as opposed to when I pay for it, it's like it's one thing together, right? And so what we see with NFTs is also that was the paradigm shift, right? Like, why would I purchase a digital rock, because now it's like, well, I can prove that I purchased this digital rock, right? You can put it on your desktop if you want, save as or whatever, but would you be able to prove it? And that was a cultural shift that needed to take place. And so the next one is going to be like, okay, well, the actual data itself and payments are going to be one. We're still operating where you pay for something in crypto and you get something in return. But that's still like Web 2.0 thinking. In the future, it'll be different.
I would say that this is more proof of work than showing up to an office. Because in office, you can do whatever you like, and
as long as you're there from 9 to 5.
Right.
Now,
The Pareto principle that 20% of the employees do 80% of the work. Is that it? Or most of the work?
Well, just that presentism, that idea of like, if you're there, you must be working, but it's not necessarily true, is it? Or you might not be effective.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's a good segue though into Hona and what we're trying to build. So let's see if we can try this. So am I able to share my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Down at the bottom. Yeah. There we go.
There it is.
You see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I'm putting it into big screen. Can you see it now? Big screen?
Yes.
Full screen. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I put this together because what we're trying to do, right, is map like what's happening in the Web 2.0 world and what we're trying to do with Hona. Okay. So in Hona, and for those who are listening, you can go to hona.io. In Hona, in Web 2.0, the current world we live in, you got LinkedIn, right, where you display your work. But we know with resumes and CVs, it's quite easy to fluff like what you've done, right? There's no real way to prove any of that stuff. So in Hona, what we're trying to build up is actually the ability for you to prove your stuff to a minute detail, right? The outcome is actually the most important thing. But if you're putting stuff on chain and it's all connected to your outcome, then you can trust that, okay, all the proof of work is there if I want to check it. And
a bit like Craig Wright proving himself to be Satoshi.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly this. Craig has been he built Bitcoin, right, to solve his own problems, right? And in the process, solving many other problems. So, and then of course you have Twitter, right, where you scroll mindlessly. Well, in Hona, what we're trying to do is build, a feed where essentially all your progress updates are, of course, connected to your commitments, the outcome that you're looking to get. And so what you get is that, well, every single thing you put up should have a purpose. Now, we'll still have spaces where you can just chat, do whatever you want, that's not connected to a commitment. But the idea is that when you're going through and scrolling, that you're seeing people's productive, output. In Netflix, you have browsing movies. In Hona, we want people to be able to browse inspiration through the form of challenges, right? So in an organization, you could expect like, okay, hey, guys, we've got a challenge to hit like $100,000, for this month. Who wants to join in? People then join in. It's visible. You see who joins, and that you can compensate them quite transparently. That way, you're also managing the budgets a lot better, and in a lot more
visible.
Yes, exactly. Masterclass.com, right? It's about learning from experts, which is great. But Hona, we want people to be able to learn from the community itself. What we're going to be implementing is the ability for people to, if they decide to cancel a commitment or abandon it, like it's okay if you change your mind, but you just need to sort of put in like, I learned this, or I changed my mind because of this, and you track that for yourself. And then of course, Asana is task-based. Most project management tools are task-based. What we wanted to have the focus be on is the outcome, because as people work remotely, you're not going to have a micromanager there to just oversee all your little, things that you're doing. You need to be able to trust that it's like the commitment, the main thing, the outcome that is the focus. And so all of this of Web 2.0 is what we're kind of bringing into Hona for the future. And as we were talking about, right, instead of the data being stuck in one platform, we want it to be free to move. So these days, so many people are constantly moving between platforms, right, because things change. But each time you do that, you have to kind of like migrate your data over, which can be a pain. If you're using the blockchain, well, that data stays with you connected to your own wallet, ideally, and you just plug and play into any of the platforms you want. Right. So the data, old way, platform owned. The new way, Web 3.0, is user owned. And if it's going to be user owned, then we want to have the best interface for these things. Yeah, and then this stuff I think we kind of already touched on. We're just, again, talking about like teams are going to be more remote. Organizations are now providing a sense of community, and individuals are wanting to seek verifiability through NFTs, etc. We want to be at the center, got to move fast, and yada yada.
Wow.
Don't yada yada.
Fabulous.
Let's read it. Let's read it.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
No, that is
Brilliant.
amazing. I mean, I feel like you've come up with about 5 concepts I've not heard before.
That's what I'm hearing. So this whole thing, right? This is why we're like, at least why I'm in the Bitcoin space, right?
And how did you come into the Bitcoin space, George?
Good segue question. Yes, I'll stop sharing this. Perfect. I got involved around 2013. I was in Melbourne at the time. I was the community manager for a local co-working space, and we had Australia's first Bitcoin ATM. So if you guys know that Wildcard, she was the one responsible for that ATM, and the one responsible for exposing me to the whole Bitcoin scene.
Was she? I didn't realize she did an ATM.
Yeah. So she was a very strong advocate in the early days. And yeah, so I always give props there. And then after that, things obviously went up and down in the Bitcoin space, and it wasn't, I think, until 2016 that I kind of saw things like get stronger. And I was always coming at it from a community standpoint, right? Like I was like, I sort of am intrigued by the culture that is forming here, right? And what they're doing. And then 2016, moving into 2017, that's when we saw Ethereum, ICOs, start to go nuts. I got swept up in that wave for, I think, 1 or 2 months. And then I was like, I don't see this ending well. And yeah, and I guess I was right, because we saw what happened with so many of those ICOs. A lot of people made a lot of money from it, but at the same time, it's like a lot of shady things were happening. And we wanted to disassociate ourselves, because in 2018, that's when I formed Faia. I was also the the global community manager for Bitcoin Cash, for the Bitcoin Cash Fund as well. So when the split took place, right, I moved with Bitcoin Cash, and there was so much energy. I mean, really loved my time there. But then I also saw what was going on. They were going too far into the community side and forgetting the fundamentals. Right? This is my balancer coming in. So like, I love communities, but I understand the importance of the individual too. And they were going too far that side, and I left. And then we saw the next split, and I was like, timing again, intuition.
Yes.
And I stayed with
Extra
BSV.
sensory.
Yes. I remember reaching out to Roger Ver and saying, hey, because we were in communications, we were talking throughout all this. He was always nice to me, but I said, look, good luck to you, whichever way you go. Well, I knew which way he was going, but I'm going down, BSV for these reasons, and wish you best of luck. And that was kind of like the last time, I spoke with him, and now we are here, and we see where we're at.
Wow.
Incredible. I mean, you've really been here since very early days by the sound of it. And from your CV, you seem to do a lot of things fast as well. Is that just your kind of trademark? You know what I mean? You seem to get a lot done in a short space of time.
You fit the Bitcoin Jesus persona way better than Roger Ver does. I'm just saying. Restoring such light and honesty to the internet, and just like completely flipping the script on all the dark and all the nonsense and all the stuff that's meant to suck us into the traps of the internet. I just absolutely love that you've flipped it so beautifully. And it made it to where we can prosper as we're actually being, true to the human spirit. It's
100%. Thanks, Casey.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go
Continue. What I love about you and your company thinking and like your spirit, let's say that, is that you're very authentic and honest, and you really honor.
Yes. Yep.
So that's great.
Alignment.
Not many people in this world right now that I can say that about.
Yeah, there's nobody that's like, what is it? Monetizing
truth
honesty and truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's so that's what I absolutely love about this whole ecosystem. But
I think Daniel's having a go with Boost Power, isn't he? But
amazing way.
Yes, that too. Now, George, you are someone that I have noticed since I met you in London there at the Four Seasons at the Deggans
yes, I met you there
meetup.
as well, actually. Yeah.
That you have a lot of inspiration and you do post a lot of quotes. And even throughout the
I love
pandemic, you posted a lot of quotes, a lot of stoic quotes, a lot of inspiration. So would you be so open to share with us your routine? What is your daily inspiration or motivation routine that you think could help everyone, or at least that it helps you personally?
That is a good question.
Yes.
Yeah, I have. It's funny because I'm moving around a lot, right? Like my routine gets disrupted a lot. I have this like love-hating relationship with routine, and it's also kind of why like Hona exists, because it helps me with my own stuff. But so in terms of motivation, it always starts with my dreams first. I'm a very active dreamer, so most nights I am dreaming. So journaling also comes into play. So when I can, like after I wake up, I will journal like crazy. Before I go to bed, I will also try to write down. And as much as I love my tech, I always keep my journal with me, and pen. The old, I guess it's old school now, right? Writing things down on paper.
Oh yeah.
But I still like that connection, with the physical when it comes to those things. So it's usually things before bed and right after I wake up. That's where I'll get everything out of my head. No joke, shower. In the shower is where a lot of ideas come through. So if you can get like one of those waterproof whiteboards, like highly recommend you get them. They are a thing, and it's great.
Idea.
Yep, it's great. Whoever invented that, like, yeah, you deserve all the money. And then
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, no, look it up.
It's a
I think
thing.
they sell them on they sell them on eBay. But then also Notion. So I use Notion to store a lot of what I write down.
Yeah, that's a good app. Yeah.
It is like, I used to be a huge fan of Evernote, so they were kind of like the precursor. Then Notion came out and just out innovated them, and so I migrated all my data over, all my dreams from the years and all of my quotes and things. So with Notion, it's very easy for me to, like, if I'm watching a movie, right, on my phone, I'm watching a movie, reading a book, I'll just put it straight into my Notion notes. So I've got like a huge database of like quotes and dad jokes as well. I actually store dad jokes.
Okay.
Oh, my favorite.
I'm gonna need that app.
Oh,
Can
Notion,
you
yeah.
please give that, because I'm putting all in Evernote still. And yes, thank you very much.
There you go. Put it there for you.
I've got it installed, but I'm not using it. I really should. I know I should.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
I just use that notepad in my iPad. The notes thing. I mean, but I'm a bit like you. I just have page after page.
Yep.
I actually secretly write down rap lyrics.
Nice.
But
Oh, that you compose yourself?
No, that's so cool.
Yes, Korppi.
Yeah, but
Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, and I think Micah has a great experience as far as traveling. She's been to 15 different countries in 2 months, working on a variety of projects, attending conferences.
It's hard on the bus, yeah.
It's right.
Really hard to hear what you're saying.
Yes, we can hear you.
We were just talking about how much traveling you're doing.
It's really hard to talking about how you're traveling. Been traveling so much. Yeah. So I'm simply listening to you guys in today's episode.
Struggling. Okay. Well, they were.
I wanted to say though, just because I know it's really noisy where we are as well. It's like
like I've been on Hona for about a month or so, and George is a really good accountability buddy. He like literally chases your ass to make sure that you're doing what you said you were going to do. It's brilliant. He's so good and he's so motivational. It's wonderful, and it's really nice that like you are there to actually, you know, just make sure that everybody is kind of keeping to their commitments as well. So I honour you for that, to be honest with you, George, as well. Seriously.
Thank you, Diddy. I tried amidst everything else.
Is there anything I can get out of you, George, about this meta circle? Is there anything you can tell us that's you know? Because it looks intriguing. It looks a bit like Korppi's. What's your fire place called? Korppi, where you all sit around the fire?
Kota.
Kota. It seems a bit like that to me conceptually. What's going on there? Is there anything you can say about it?
Yeah. So yeah, we haven't launched that, right? So as I mentioned, we haven't really announced like the new sites and everything we're doing. But the idea there is, yes, we want to be able to provide a place where it is like a fireplace, right? Like we're called Faia, and we want to have that same sort of get those same sort of vibes out in a in a circle.
That really appeals to us. Yeah, you're gonna have to put us on that app. That sounds cool.
Ancient wisdom behind sharing knowledge around a fire.
And how is it going to manifest? Exactly, have you got anything you can tell us without giving it
without
away?
revealing too much? Yeah, I can't yet because my team will be like, "Stop it, George."
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
but it looks intriguing. It really looks intriguing, and just the sort of thing we'd enjoy.
Perfect. So there should be. Is there a newsletter sort of box on the page?
Yeah.
So just put your email addresses in, and then I will get my team to just tag you so we can email you guys when that specific thing is launched.
Where do we enter our email address?
Should be at the end of the landing the website. Is it there, Ruth? At the end of the page?
It is. It's right at the bottom.
At the very bottom, Casey.
Again, I wanted to go to it.
Yes, and back to the Hona app. I participated as well in the last month. I had a commitment, and I think I only completed the commitment a couple of times. But just actually having the commitment was a great experience.
Great.
And going in to approve your partner's commitments and seeing things, I observed people that were making commitments that were interesting to me. I know someone kept doing a Wim Hof breathing exercise.
Yeah.
So it inspired me to then go search for Wim Hof. But I ended up finding someone called James Nestor instead. And then after learning from him about
the Breathe book. Yes, I've read that.
Yes, and his experience with different skills, latent gifts that animals and humans have. So just by scrolling in Hona, I discovered insight about the nature of life and reality on Earth.
Wow.
Yeah.
So even though I have lots of X's on my commitment month, I still felt that there was a lot of benefit from that, and even tracking, having that accountability, and to know also that sometimes you do fail, but don't feel bad, just do better. I think there's something positive about just tracking it personally.
Correct.
Yeah, back on the saddle.
Right.
George, something that I wanted to write myself, but I haven't. But it is not too dissimilar. I'd love to write an app that tracks health data points. So for people who are trying to either work on their healthy eating or improve a chronic illness or something like that, I think that there's a real need for something decent that does that as well. And then maybe you could have groups of people who are trying out particular things like, intermittent fasting, or, you know what I mean? There's lots of kind of things that people have in common often when they're trying new things.
Be a good fit to incorporate into the Hona app somehow.
Yep. So that's exactly it. So, so we're currently in the midst of like closing our next fundraising round. Because we have so much more like that we want to do. And it's interesting, Ruth, that you talk about that, because when I was in Miami a woman in the healthcare space came up and she said, hey, I'm in the healthcare space. We have about 4 million patients, but we want to do this. We might want to test your app for 1 million of our patients. And I was like, she's like, would you be able to do like 1 million, people, users? I was like, I don't know just yet, like just
maybe.
literally like launched officially like a month or two ago.
Yeah.
But it's a good signal, right? Because I think it's the right line of thinking that we're thinking about, and that we're hoping, Hona could be used as an interface for a lot of these different use cases. The trouble is, as a startup, you always have to focus, right?
Yeah. So you can't go in all directions.
No, that's been our challenge because every time a new use case comes, like, oh yeah, we want to do it, but at the same time, we gotta.
You might be able to repurpose though. I'm just thinking, some of the code might be reusable for something like that, and maybe brand it differently. But like, it's a powerful tool, isn't it, for people to do things in groups loosely, but keep hold of their own data and their own privacy if they want to.
So, Faia, we're talking about meta communities. This is exactly it. Because imagine your community is able to operate in multiple different platforms with different things, but then move regardless of the platform.
Yeah.
So with Hona, as we move more people into being able to store their stuff on chain, the idea is that you'd be able to move your community wherever you want. Like nomads, like I've lived this life. So it's like, I'm also trying to get this into
the ultimate digital nomad. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Living the dream, literally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Nice. And this is a bit vulnerable, but I just had this brainstorm speaking with you all. Maybe you could also have a kind of private version for personal development. One that you don't even have to post it for everyone to see, but you could track your emotions or communication in relationships.
Correct.
So I feel that.
Yeah. Yep. So that's why we have private groups. Sorry, Casey, what was that?
Private groups.
Just like a diary that can track
or even
hold you accountable to like your own personal boundaries that you're setting for yourself. And
I have to give a shout out to George because he already gave that for us, actually, for a group.
Yes, our private group.
Yeah.
So what shall we do with that, though? How can we use that as a private?
I'm sure we can,
what
tasks
you just said,
and all
Rory.
sorts. Yeah.
I mean, yes, but like this stuff that you're just talking about, right? Like the vulnerable stuff, right? Because trusted circles. So that's why you need a private space for yourselves, because you have your personal relationships. Now, on the blockchain side of things, right? This is where I think a lot of people are still a bit iffy. It's like, oh, I don't know if I want that on chain, right? That type of personal stuff. So this is where the encryption stuff comes in. So with encryption, then it's going to be on chain. Like it's like a note that there was some sort of data that went on chain, but it's still encrypted. You have access to that, right? Or if you share the encryption with somebody else with shared keys. So that's what we're trying to move towards from the technical
that
side.
would be amazing.
So imagine you as a sister, like a sisterhood, that only you guys had keys that shared an access of the data that's on chain. Right?
Much better than Twitter chat.
Yeah,
very powerful. Yeah,
let's go.
and really necessary if you're monitoring health data points as well.
Yes.
Exactly. So it's really just the interfaces that are lacking right now, and then that next paradigm shift that we're talking about, right? And I'm still waiting for that, because a lot of us still are kind of like valuing a lot of the on-chain stuff in the form of fiat currencies, right? Like their dollar value, and it's not, all of this is not going to work until we start looking at the actual data as the value, right? And thinking in those terms. So I don't know when that'll happen, but hopefully
data as currency. Yeah.
Yep. Correct.
Right.
Because
well, we need a new symbol. What is the data symbol? What does it look like?
Yeah. Well, I think the idea was Bitcoin, right? But that has taken on its own cultural. Right now, it's gone a different path as digital gold. Unfortunately,
it's hijacked like everything else.
It feels like you're almost speaking a different language, George. I don't want to overstate it, but at the same time, it's like you're a good few yards ahead.
Maybe
like, of where the, you know what I mean? You're where the ball's going, and
it's
itself.
painful. It's painful sometimes, right?
Yeah,
Being a bit
yeah,
too ahead, because
definitely.
you have to wait. You have to be told, either you're crazy or you're doing it wrong. You should do it like this. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. I mean, there's so many other opportunities that have come up that I
Yeah.
could have taken.
Yeah.
But in 2018, that's why I went all in on this space, because I saw it coming and I just wanted to position for, as you said, where the ball is going, as opposed to anywhere else.
And I recall you having experience with the Tim Draper House.
Yes.
And they also gave a lot of great entrepreneurial and business conferencing talks, wisdom sharing. So how was that experience?
No, it was great. So during all this, so while I was in Singapore, so shout out to Draper Startup House. So if you look up Draper Startup House, they are a global chain of startup hostels. So they kind of take the best of co-working spaces and co-living spaces together, but specifically for startups and digital nomad types, people building businesses all over. And Singapore, in Singapore, they had, it originally started out as an organization called Tribe Theory. So that's what they called themselves. So it was Tribe Theory. Vikram Bharati, he was the founder of Tribe Theory. And I stayed at their place when I moved to Singapore. So this is how much I planned or didn't plan. I knew I needed to go to Singapore. I went to Singapore and a friend of mine told me, hey, Tribe Theory is a good place, you should check it out. And I went there and I figured stuff out while I was there. So my first couple of weeks in Singapore was at Tribe Theory. And then I met the founder and I was talking about all this community stuff and Bitcoin. And he was like, oh, this is really fascinating. Tribe Theory was one of the first, I think, hostels to accept Bitcoin in Singapore. And so, we just kind of hit it off. And so because I was just starting Faia out, he was like, hey, I'd really love to work together. So he kind of made me like a virtual chief community officer for Draper Startup House. And that was what allowed me to just make all of these connections very rapidly. So if you ever go into a new country, try to find these type of spaces because they just kind of catapult your connections with other people. So yeah, when I took that gig up, it was essentially just a contractual arrangement between Faia and Draper Startup House, Tribe Theory at the time. And then that just saw me doing all the other things that I was doing with Faia, also learning about the sort of digital nomad network more intimately, and helping them to sort of bridge the gap between their physical communities and then the digital communities that they ended up having to create very rapidly in the pandemic last year. So I was actually trying to get the founder, Vikram, onto Slack for the longest of times, right? Because just as a minimum, I'm like, you need a way for these people to connect with each other when they leave the space. Because they were coming into the space, yay, great. But then they leave and then there's no more connection. So because we're making this transition, right, to more meta communities, I'm gonna keep using it, they just needed to make that, bridge that gap. And then the pandemic hit, and then it was like clear, it's like, okay, we need to do this because nobody's now gonna come to our physical spaces. So it's like an imperative thing.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's like ghost towns.
Correct. So that was an insurance. The digital community is like an insurance for the physical business model. Luckily, they've survived it, right? But I remember at the time, there was just so much chaos. And we had to really think about like, okay, how do you want to position this? What type of community? Is it going to be gated? Are you going to charge? Going to accept crypto payments, still if you want. And then that's when I also started to see, like, I guess a platform like Slack, I don't know how they're going to make that transition into Web3. They have all the right thinking of integrating everything, but the fundamental infrastructure, right, is still like, Amazon Web Servers, etc. I'm sure they'll be able to do it over the next decade, but I really saw like, okay, you have these moving communities, they got all their data, they're kind of transitioning between different platforms. That's then kind of what fueled Hona, and also the pack and stuff we were doing over the last 5 years. It like so many different things kind of just come together for me in my life. They seem random at the time, but then there's a point where it just comes together and I just try to trust it.
Yes, it's like that dream.
That's the law of attraction at play.
I actually see this happening between Women of BSV and Hona.
So do I.
I'm seeing it.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
So
And
for people like myself that aspire to be digital nomads and travel the world, telling people about all these amazing opportunities in this new Web3.
Yep.
What is the best target market for you guys right now for people out here that are advertising for you, driving traffic to your platform? And is there a referral link built into Hona?
Not yet. Oh my
Not yet.
God, you should see our backlog.
I'm
Yes.
telling all the developers, like, we need these so that, because we're naturally going to talk about such amazing things.
Agreed.
So,
Okay,
I mean, the
yeah.
fact that this is restoring such a beautiful experience humans can have with other humans, like those kind of things just help with the sharing.
Yep, agreed. And it's been in our backlog, and I will reprioritize it for December. So actually, maybe for this month. So let me just put it in here as well, Casey.
I'm amazed at the rapidity with which you're developing the back end as well. I mean, that's another thing.
Yeah, so I got to give a shout out to Siggy, who's our CTO. I found our journey. So we actually started January of this year, but I kind of wipe out the first half of the year because I made some classic startup mistakes, and I also lost that team. So I had three developers from Bangalore. They came from the Ethereum space, and essentially had to like train them up on everything BSV. And after 3 months, they ended up just leaving. Not because like they hated it, they just were attracted by all the NFT stuff in the Ethereum space again.
Money.
So,
yeah.
Essentially money. Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Greed.
And they're like, nope. They're like, oh, no, we want to go do that. I was like, okay, fine. But that left me in a little bit of a bind because I was like, okay, we've built this stuff. We've kind of just like spent 3 months on it. And the fundamentals, they got wrong. So I guess I take it on myself, maybe not communicating with them, like why it was so important to have the BSV structure underneath, like, just well structured for the future. Then I went out on the hunt. I was like, shit, okay, 3 months in already. The first investment we got from Tim Draper, and I'm like, time, right? It then took me about 2 to 4 weeks to then find Siggy, and I found Siggy through the Slack group. What is it called? Xiaowei.
The other one.
Oh, Xiaowei Slack group?
Yes, his Slack group, but it's called something.
S-Script?
S-Script, there you go. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
So I found him through there. So, shout out to the S-Script Slack group. High quality developers in there. And I also learned that, there aren't as many like good developers that are available, in the space. Like we need so many
They're all
more.
busy.
Yes, they're all busy.
Mm-hmm.
So we still got such a long way to go. But anyways, I managed to find Siggy. He had just finished up something else. And so the timing was right. His background is in, I think he worked for, these like billion-dollar German companies. He's been an executive himself, but he loves building. So he's much more senior than I am, and he can build fast. And whenever we talk, he'll be like, oh, yeah, this is going to take a long time. Like, what's a long time to you, Siggy? He's like, a day or two. And I'm like,
okay, you're not a good 6 months. Yeah.
We have to adjust our expectations
Yeah.
with Siggy. So, yeah, got to give a shout out to him. He's like the one, building a lot of this stuff. And thank God for him, to be honest, because he took everything that those three guys did over 3 months and he did it in like weeks. And
just redid it.
Yes, redid it with the BSV structure that I had envisioned earlier on. So I'm a lot more confident now because I know he's capable of building that structure. And actually, he has another platform, social network called Blockpost. So you might not be familiar with it because he's a builder, he's not a marketer. But this, I've just put the URL there. It essentially, you'll see that he's already pulling in on-chain transactions from different BSV platforms right now. And this is the sort of thing about like an open social network, right? Where people's data is not caught up in any one platform.
Oh, I feel like I have seen this actually.
Yep.
I stumbled across this the other day.
So that's his proof of work, right? And this was some of the stuff that I was trying to ask when I was hiring. I was like, what have you built? Like, what have you got? And Siggy, I was like, wow, I love what you're doing.
It's beautiful. I mean, the style is really great as well. It looks good.
Yep. So he prefers to do the building stuff. He doesn't want to do too much of the design. So I've been doing the design, product management, and then the selling for now. And yeah, he works fast. I'm really honored to have him on the team, and you can thank him for that speed.
Well, it has. It's really been like appearing and appearing and appearing. Every time I go back, there's like new buttons. No, I'm so impressed. I mean, I can see one of the buttons that I hadn't seen before is webinars. What kind of functionality is that going to be? Is it going to be like what we're doing now?
Yep.
Is that in Hona, in the Hona app, right?
Correct.
Wow, webinars in Hona.
Okay.
So what we're moving towards is, so you know how you see the private chat in StreamYard, right? What we want you to be able to do is, we've noticed that when people go to watch online events, they want to take action, right? So imagine you could actually, you might already have a commitment in Hona. It plugs into the webinar, and you could actually take action or create new commitments on the fly while you're watching a thing or going through a webinar. We had this experience even in Miami and New York when people are looking at Hona, they're like, shit, I'm going to just create a commitment now off of this thing that I just learned, from Craig after watching. So the idea, what we want to build is that sort of like much quicker process of being able to like take something from what you saw into an action, tied to a commitment, proof of work, etc. Because then you're learning more about yourself as well, like your interests and all these other things.
Makes me wonder whether something like River's yoga studio would be quite good being broadcast.
Quite possibly. Exactly, right? So this is what we want to get to, where in a group video, you also have multiple people, right? Like they might be doing their exercise. Well, what if you wanted to capture that as part of your proof for your commitment that you've already created? Well, instead of doubling up, like the video should be able to just like your part. You could be like, hey, yep, I did it today. Here's my proof. It was connected to this group video.
Yeah.
That's all we want to get to.
That's so cool. But it's also kind of a focal point for the community as well. It's not just like putting it on YouTube or whatever.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you should be able to have, share it how you want.
Using Hona and seeing the names that you usually see on Twitter fly by with their commitments, it gave a kind of richness to relationships. Someone that you would see on Twitter and just see their posts, then suddenly there was all this emotion tied to it. You thought, wow, they're taking a walk in the park today, or they're doing some new exercise. Now, the one thing with proof of work, we discussed this on the tutorial video, is that I don't want to broadcast myself doing exercise videos as my proof of work.
Correct.
And so I think even with River's class, I only turned the camera on at one point just to give her feedback, to let her see someone else was there following along with her. And I think when she saw me doing the moves, she kind of toned it down a bit. So then I thought, I'm not going to turn the camera on again because I want her to go full on into her excellence, and I know what I can do so far. So, for example, when River is doing handstands and, raising herself off of the ground, and maybe I am squatting, I could put a commitment in there, like work on the squat and work on this move every day for a month, and then eventually make progress in that particular class.
Correct.
So even if it's something as simple as the standing up with your foot on your leg, what's that one called?
I'm trying to imagine what's the foot on the leg.
The tree, right?
Oh, tree.
Yes, the tree. I fall over still doing that. That's very basic. But to keep working on that and eventually get that one down, before you know it, I'll be walking on my hands all over the place.
Yes.
And so that's it, Rory. Like, because it's again having that sense of trust and privacy with all this, right? And so you can choose whether you want to have something shown or not. And what we're wanting to do is, like in Hona, it's more like you can make a post without proof, right? But we'll bring some of the gamification elements over time. But we want it to be subtle as well, because we don't want it to just be feel like a game either, because that can get in the way sometimes. But it's like, if you put proof, you just get kind of like added, points or something or rewards as a result of doing that. And
Okay.
that's what we're aiming for.
Great.
What occurs to me as you're saying all this is, how Craig Wright often says about education that it's not enough to learn, you have to be tested.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't 100% always agree with him, but I understand what he's saying. And I don't know, maybe I'm just lazy. It's possible.
Yeah.
But
who isn't? Everybody is.
The thing is, like you say, and it's that kind of principle, isn't it? Of it's one thing to learn something, but to actually go back and be tested on it, and really be able to sort of be satisfied that you really did learn it. You didn't just read it and forget it. I mean, it makes me wonder whether there's like an educational aspect that could come into this as well, where people are not just it's not just sort of setting goals or whatever, but it's actually setting learning goals and then running it. I don't know. I'm just thinking like it seems like a structure that could fit all sorts of different ideas into
exactly. And that's the thing about our challenge of focus, right? But that is part of our thinking, is that what we're wanting to do is, like, on the surface, you're doing simple tracking. And then that's why over time, what we're wanting to do is like be able to get more intelligent sort of feedback for yourself from the learning aspect. Because I am a learn to do by doing person.
Yes,
right?
me too.
Everybody's different. Like Craig is like an academic style learner, right?
Right.
Like,
Study.
That's not my thing. I like to be able to apply and learn same time, and or to do stuff. And so that's why kind of Hona is also like a reflection of that. It's like you just go and do, but then you're tracking it and you're seeing and learning from yourself. And then there so happens to be other people, right? If it's public, it'll be everybody, they can engage. If it's a small group, well, they're trusted people that can also engage with you. But ideally, all of those learnings you should be able to carry with you in your profile. So this is that thing I was talking about, like the social proof of work and that reputation you build for yourself. Well, you can choose ideally who you want to share the access of that with, but the outcomes of that, can be public. So you can have all of it connected to your profile, but you choose who gets access. And that's where the smart contracts come in. So you'll see if somebody accesses it to view it, like Rory with your video, right? Then you're like, okay, I know you saw it, but that should be because you gave permission for that person to be able to see it.
Yeah.
Right. And you do have that to do public or private.
Correct.
Commitment of yes, notes.
But the on-chain side, that's what there's so much more we need to do for the on-chain aspects. And again, we're not there yet because like with video, the capacity for the blockchains, like even BSV, I think there were some really large videos that try to be uploaded, and I think there was something to do with the miners. They're like, it's too big. I was like, what? But it'll come. I think just BSV is leading in the block size aspect. But I plan for 10 to 20 more years.
Great. You have that long-term vision. Yeah. And also about Tuvalu and their national digital ledger.
Yep.
Could you brief us on that and the audience?
Sure. So the Tuvalu National Digital Ledger Project, TNDL for short, is something that came about as a result of an article I wrote on the eve of 2019 into 2020. And the article was called A 5-Point Plan to Future-Proofing Tuvalu, the Sinking Nation. I don't like the Sinking Nation thing, but that's what everybody refers to it as. And part of that plan, the 5-point plan, involved essentially going cashless, right, or paperless. And I included Bitcoin as part of their sort of infrastructure plans or digital infrastructure plans, because they're at a time where the next decade, right, they've got a wider digital transformation project taking place now, and a lot of the stuff from my 5-point plan is now being executed as part of that, which is crazy because intuition, right?
Yes, and the power of one person.
Amazing.
And other people.
And other people, right.
Right.
So that article I wrote right after the countdown, midnight. I was talking to my auntie. It was a very quiet one. And we were talking about Tuvalu. She was telling me about some things happening there. And then I just had this download. I had to go and write this plan. And it took me, I think, like 2-3 hours. I was up till 3 a.m. And I just published it out. I was like, okay, done, out, no edits. And then next morning, it just started getting spread across my Tuvaluan families and networks and stuff. And then not too long after, it was with the Tuvalu government, and they're like, "We want to have a talk about this plan of yours. Can you tell us more about blockchain?"
Wow.
And that's how that occurred.
Wow, beautiful. And
Yep.
then what are they actually doing? Are they
Yes.
putting
Oh,
some
sorry.
government data on chain, or
Correct.
is it going to be used as a currency?
So let me give some practical examples of what's already happening in today's time, right? And then apply to Tuvalu. So Estonia, I'll give the example of Estonia. Estonia actually was one of the first to implement e-government services, right? Where they took almost everything they had, digitized it, and we're doing everything on the internet, right? And this was far back, I think, in the 2000s or something. And for the Tuvalu government, what we're doing is we're moving from eGov to BGov, and I think nChain have been using that term, right? And all it is like, instead of it being all eGov Web 2.0, it's moving them into this Web 3.0 space where it's blockchain based. All right. So at a very simple level, that's what's happening, and so helping them to get on board with that takes a lot at this point in time, because one, Tuvalu is they're doing a leap, right? So they're going from like still a lot of very old school problems, right, just from the basics, and they're leaping into like a BGov sort of setup. However, a lot of people don't know this, but they own the rights to .tv, and so they've been getting revenue from the .tv domain, and they can actually use this as part of
nice.
Right, these sort of projects. So what I'm loving about them is that the next generation have starting to come into government, and they've been educated overseas, New Zealand, UK, all this, and they're coming back to Tuvalu to help. And so they're very much aware of what's going on in this space, what's possible, and they want Tuvalu to sort of like move, with it. And so our role, or for Faia's role, is like we're just the translators of this space, right? Because one, I have the cultural context and can translate a lot of the stuff that like our partners nChain and Brendan, Elas Digital, like what they're coming with all the technical stuff. So we're constantly doing this translation of like, this is what this means in normal people terms, right? This is what this means in what you would understand for your local culture. And so a lot of what we're doing is moving things like their citizenship registration, births, deaths, and marriages certificates, all those systems that they've been doing quite manually, helping them to translate that into like a blockchain-based system for Tuvalu. And this will set them up for the future and for a whole bunch of other regions, because they would probably be one of the first to actually use the blockchain, a public ledger, in this manner. Most governments, most big companies are looking at private blockchain, which is a misnomer.
Yeah.
And Tuvalu is caught up in the middle of a lot of geopolitics as well. So it's not as simple as bring in technology. It's like, okay, bring in technology, and what sort of geopolitical ramifications will this have with China, US, Australia, New Zealand, etc.
Oh, right. Who are you going to upset?
And
I mean,
Tuvalu is due north of Fiji.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes. So it's a strategic location, South Pacific.
Yep.
Pacific Rim.
And so my vision, all of what I'm doing, it will involve the Pacific region. So there's, we speak about, the dreams and the visions and the intuition, and a lot of things have been pulling me to that part of the world. So right now you'll see me, right? Singapore, Australia, I'm in Mexico. What I'm doing is I'm actually making my way around the Pacific Rim, because I'm going to be connecting a whole bunch of things for the Pacific. They are in the ocean, right? It's like, is it 51% of the planet's surface or something? It's like a ridiculous size. And the Pacific nations themselves have something known as EMZ. Is it EMZ? It's something economic zone. And what it means is like they've got their islands, but there's like a law of the sea that gives them ownership.
Maritime zone.
Correct, right? And if you put all of that together, it's actually quite large. So if you thought about all the South Pacific islands as one nation, it'd be a pretty
big, yeah.
Pretty big.
There's a lot of them, aren't there?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Or a balancer of power. So this is where I look at the opportunity for the Pacific region. We've got the East and the West, but I feel like there's room for a third, right? That they could be a balancer of power, not just a power, but a balancer.
That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? If there was another,
wouldn't it?
Sort of force for good at the table. Yeah, that would be amazing.
So, a lot of what I'm doing is moving towards that type of future, and I see it. But I still, this is why I talk about the 10, 20 years, right? Because these types of transformations are going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe even beyond my lifetime. But you might hear some of my interviews with Michael Hudson. Michael Hudson gets this even from like a spiritual, philosophical sense. We've talked about how this also connects in with some of these like ancient legends. So in the Pacific, they have stories of places called Hawaii. Recently, scientists found this large landmass under New Zealand called Zealandia. I highly recommend you guys.
No way.
Highly recommend you look this up, and this connects into the legends of Atlantis and Lemuria.
Wow.
So some people think that they're just like myths, right? But my dreams have been telling me otherwise, that these places existed.
So George, you do a lot of remote work.
Yes.
And is it hard to keep track of, like day-to-day things?
No, this is where like all the tools, I mean, because I've been living this life now for like the last decade, and a lot more fully over the last couple years, I use Linear for Hona. That's an app that we use for like, I guess, the product management side and tracking issues and whatnot. For other tasks and things, Notion is like kind of like an all-in-one. Like I love Notion, and it's just getting better and better. And then of course Slack, just for more team-based chat-like communications. And those three things I think are like the core at the moment for remote work. Yeah.
And how about for play? Do you play sports or music or roller skating?
Gosh.
What do you like?
I do like play, but I haven't been in a place long enough to like form those type of circles. When I was in Singapore, I actually got really into Weiqi or Go. I don't know if you guys have heard.
Yes, I know. With all the
My
lines.
brother plays that. Is it the black and white?
Yes.
Checkers, or I don't know what you call them.
So, stones.
Stones.
So yeah, I came across that and I loved it a lot more than chess. And I would essentially, there was like one tea house in Singapore that apparently the Queen of England sat at, and I would go to this tea house a lot to have like business meetings. So new people I'd meet, I'd like bring them into this like Japanese setup, get the tea out, and then I'd bring out Go, and I actually would learn a lot about a person by playing them through Go. So
nice.
Definitely.
I don't actually know the rules of Go, but is it a bit like you're trying to take over the board? So you're trying to conquer
surround
by
a stone and then take it.
It's very different, right? This is why it's interesting. You can see a lot of
domination
between the West and East. So, right, the West thinks about war in terms of chess, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Chinese and the East will think in terms of a game like Go. And there, it's not like specific type of players. It's just surrounding the enemy, and
which is how the human body does it.
Correct.
It's much more biological.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's why I love it more. Yep.
Yes, and Weiqi, that's one of the celebrated arts of the Chinese scholar, along with painting, calligraphy, writing.
Correct.
And also playing the guqin. Yes.
Correct. Yep.
Wow.
So that's one of my favorite things for play. If I had a good crew around me and I was in one place long enough, it would usually be basketball. There is actually a basketball court here, so I at least get to play.
Oh, fun!
Every now and then. But I think those are probably the two main things for play, and just spending time with loved ones. I think as I get older, you kind of your circles get like smaller. And quality over quantity.
Right. That's so true.
But BSV will. I think this is what I've learned about communities. Right, it's always like very close and great at the beginning of any community. Right, because everybody kind of knows each other. When you get to the point where you can't remember everybody's name, it just starts to go, oh, I miss those early days, where like we all knew each other.
But you've got to get there, though. You've still got to get there.
Exactly.
Yes.
If you want to grow, it's going to happen.
And let it be, right? Let it expand, and then everyone makes their own.
That's a good point, because I think quite a lot of people left Bitcoin generally when it got to the point where it got too big to be friends with people or friends with everyone. And they kind of drifted away at that point, didn't they? Because they didn't like the fact that it wasn't quite so insular. But like, if you wanted to be insular, you're really doing it wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are. I'm now being very naive and childish, but there's 2 songs about this, and one is "Let It Be" and one is "Let It Go."
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
Agreed.
I'm gonna get out my ukulele.
We definitely don't want to stay small, that's for sure.
We
And
really
tune
have
it.
to jam someday.
Is everybody okay if I bring this to a close now? Because we've been going for an hour
I think
and 20.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, George. This was wonderful. I'm really excited to get using it more. There's so much to keep up with and so many different apps to play with, but this is one that needs to get a much higher priority in the list of day to day. So
it's so intriguing,
and I absolutely am. Namaste to your spirit, my brother.
Thank you very much, Casey. Oh, and you got a cute baby. My gosh.
Thank you. She's on Fridays and Saturdays. I don't have a sitter every week, so she had to say hello, obviously.
Of course. Beautiful.
Thank you so much, George.
So thank you so much.
Thank you all. Like, you really had a great time. I'm sure, we could have gone longer, right?
Oh, yeah. I could talk to you for hours, I'm sure.
Yes. And welcome back again. This is the start of the conversation.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure to make a goal. We'll set a goal here together now. We will, on at least a weekly basis, let's say weekly, we will experiment in each of our own individual ways with using our private group, the Women of BSV, in the Hona app, and we'll see how we use it.
Great.
So,
did you post that to Twitter, Casey?
I'm about to.
Yeah.
Great. And that's it. And I think, one of the things that is probably lacking, right? Like, I think we're still kind of looking for somebody who's good with like marketing copy about Hona, like, how we present it, because what I'm finding, even with investors, when I can talk to them like this, they get it, and then it translates when they go into the application, right? Because they understand where it's going. And so, if you guys know anyone in the next stage,
Thank you.
Thank you, George.